Wow, that's amazing. You popped in just in the nick of time. You would not believe what I've discovered about fabric. It's astonishing. Let's get into it. Hey guys, it's Boki here from Gigi's Fabric Shop, home to Juki and Janome Junkies, and welcome to the Sewing Junkies Lab. We have a really fun episode for you guys today. I'm super excited to talk about this topic. I will be your Solution Scientist Boki, and we're going to talk about fabric and the qualities of fabric and the way it stretches, and particularly how to cut fabric on the bias. So let's get into it. All right, so let's talk about the anatomy of your fabric. So what I have here today is just a 100% cotton fabric. This is from Rifle Paper Company in a beautiful little stripe. This fabric is normally about 45 inches wide, and it's folded in half, and this right here at the bottom is called your selvage. Your selvage usually contains some information like where it comes from or what the fabric is or the name of the collection. But let's talk about the stretch and give and the parts of these fabrics. So you have something on fabric that's called a warp and a weft. So let's talk about the warp first. The warp runs parallel to the selvage. So this part is going to be the strongest, least stretchy direction of the fabric. There's a little bit of play, but it's pretty solid. Like, it's really not going to give you that much play towards the bottom. All right. And then the weft is going to run perpendicular to the selvage. This is your cross wave grain. So it's going to run this way. Okay. And this side is going to give you a lot more stretch compared to that side. You see how there's like a nice little bounce to that? So now throwing in a bias cut would be at a 45-degree angle in between the warp and the weft, giving you a significant bounce. I mean, look at the way that this stretches. It's important to know the direction of your fabric and how things have to get cut, because most time a pattern will indicate which kind of way to cut it, with the grain or against the grain. So when you're especially doing a pattern like garments per se, it's going to say to cut it with the grain line. So that means that parallel part of the selvage, this part that doesn't have all the stretch. And why? Because if you're making something that's going to fit your body, you obviously don't want it to have super amount of stretch to it like the other directions of the fabric, because then it's not going to fit the way that the pattern was intended to. So it'll always say, hey, cut it with the grain line like this. So you'll know that this is the way you're supposed to cut it. You're going to lay out the pattern the lengthwise to run with the grain. So that's important to know. And if you don't maybe have a selvage on your fabric at home, just grab your fabric and feel it. So you'll know that one side is very, very taut, and then one side is much more flexible. And then of course on the bias, it has like an exceptional amount of give. So how does this relate to your projects and cutting a standard binding versus a biased binding? So I have a couple of examples to kind of walk you through binding. So traditionally, if I was to get my binding ready for like a quilt, let's say, my selvage is going to be at the bottom facing me, and this fabric, remember, would be folded in half, and it's going to be about 45 inches wide. I like to cut my binding at 2 1/4 since I do machine binding, so I would just cut straight along like this to get my cut. There is a little bit of give here. Remember, this is the strongest part down here, but right here, there definitely is a little bit of play. But is that play enough for if you were doing collars on shirts, or if you were doing curved quilts, curved corners, scalloping edges, anything that has a play to it, that's not a perfectly straight edge? That's when you would want to consider cutting on the bias to give you the most play and most flexibility. So for example, here's some normal binding right here. Definitely has a little bit of play, as you can see here. This example is cut along the selvage, the strongest part. There's no give there, but practically, for practical purposes, when you're getting your project ready for a quilt, it's just not practical to cut it this way. It's a lot more wasteful. So doing it this way is definitely more practical, unless you have a directional fabric like this one, and that all comes into play. So cutting it along the selvage is definitely the strongest and ideal for when you're making garments or whenever the pattern instructs you to do so. And then this would be kind of like a normal binding. Now, cut at a 45-degree angle. Look how much play we're going to get here. There's a ton of bounce, and this is really important because it's going to stretch the best, it's going to drape the best, it's going to flow the best. So this is what's going to allow you to do those curves without any puckering, any type of little creases and crinkles, because these cuts just don't work with that type of bounce. I want to show you up close how different the grains look and how different the fibers are woven, so you can see why this has so much play compared to just a normal little cut. So here we have that bias cut right in between at a 45-degree angle at the warp and the weft. And then here you have it with the cross-grain. And you can see how this is a very structured type of weave. It's left and right, it's very structured. There's a little bit of play in here, but nothing too crazy. And then compared to the bias cut, you can see that everything is at an angle. All those weaves are running kind of in like a diamond pattern. That's what's giving this a tremendous amount of stretch. So this is a really cool way to kind of understand why these are a little bit weakened, those threads, versus something like this that's a lot more structured. Okay, so now let's talk about actually cutting out that bias binding for whatever project you might be doing, whether it's curved quilts or scalloped edges or apparel. It's pretty simple. I like to turn my selvage to be on the left side as I'm getting ready to cut it, and this would probably be a much larger cut of fabric, but same process applies. Selvage to my left. It could be right side up or wrong side down, or wrong side up, whichever you prefer. There's not a wrong way of doing this, but this is just the way I like to kind of see it. I'm gonna fold my fabric up, so that way it creates like a 45-degree angle and that it's straight with the top, so it kind of gives me a nice area to work with. And then what I'm gonna first initially do is just cut off a little bit here. It can be like just like a quarter, just so we're cutting through that fold. Readjust. Perfect. And once you've cut through that, you can dispose of this triangle, which you could certainly cut off from this side. Like you could keep cutting some bias binding off of this side, but it's gonna be nice to continue from this side just because the strips will always be the same length. And when you do bias binding, you probably will need a little bit more fabric because the wider your fabric is, the bigger strips you're gonna have and the less attaching of pieces you're gonna have to do. So keep that in mind as well. You could probably easily utilize another strip from here, but as you cut more and more, those pieces get smaller and smaller and smaller. So you could probably discard this. So now you have it cut at that 45-degree angle and you're ready to keep going and cutting your strips at your desired width. So 2 1/4 is my preferred binding width, and you're just gonna keep cutting along, making your bias binding. And then you would cut all your pieces and attach it however much you need for your project, of course. But let's do a little stretch test here. So, wow, look at that give. Isn't that crazy? It's so crazy how much of a difference that makes versus traditionally, if this was my fabric that I used for my binding, my selvage would be facing me, right? And then I would cut my strips this way. I'm just gonna cut a little triangle off just for the sake of showing you for demonstration. This definitely has a little bit of play, but nothing in comparison to this cut. So much bouncier. This is gonna be so much easier once you get it prepared for binding. It's gonna curve so much easier. You're not gonna have to worry about little ripples and little ridges in it. It's gonna be so much smoother for your projects. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. This was a really hard topic for me to personally understand when I first started sewing, understanding how fabric stretches and what it meant to cut on the grain and what was a warp, what was a weft, and did it really matter to cut fabric on the bias? And the answer is yes, especially when working with curved projects and you have to add any binding, especially in garments as well. It makes such a big difference. So I hope you feel a little bit more confident talking about this topic here today. I appreciate you watching. Make sure you like this video if you enjoyed and you want to see more videos like this. Subscribe to our channel to look out for more amazing content, especially on the Sewing Junkies little lab series that we have. I love this series. I don't know if you guys enjoy it too, but I love looking at sewing from a scientific point of view. I just think it's so fun. I hope to see you guys very soon, and thanks again for watching. Bye.